this hybrid meeting of Planning Committee on Tuesday the 26th of August 2025. I am Councillor Jeff Jones and I will be chairing today's meeting. Just to make you all aware, this meeting will be recorded. Can I welcome any members of the public and press to today's meeting? Can I kindly ask you to observe the meeting only and not to speak or participate unless you have registered to do so? Please ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. I wish to remind members signing in remotely of their legal obligation to have their cameras switched on during the meeting, please, in order to be seen and heard while participating in council business. If you wish to speak or ask a question, please raise your electronic hand on Teams or physical hand if in person. Should you wish to ask any questions of any of the attendees here today, please ensure these come through me as the chair. I will now move on to agenda item 1, Chair's announcements. We are not due to have a fire drill, so should the fire alarm sound during the meeting, please make your way to the nearest exit. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
I see Councillor Matthew Crowley has got his hand up. Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, all. Obviously, number 6, application number PO2025/0405, installation of a heat pump is at my home at Port Talbot. So I have to declare interest in that. And I just wonder if I could, Chair, if you could put that as the third party application. I can leave then and then I won't have to come back, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Crowley. Yes, we'll take that as your personal declaration then, and if you leave for that item, that'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Agenda item 3. The minutes for the meeting held on the 5th of August 2025 are attached on pages 5 to 8 of the agenda pack for approval. Members, do you have any comments to make on the accuracy of these minutes? Please, can I have a proposer and seconder to approve the minutes?
I move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Carl. If you do not wish to raise your hand to the contrary, I will assume that you are in favour of approving the minutes.
I see no hands, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is a request for site visits. Are there any members who wish to suggest a site visit on the application presented today or for any other matter? Please also let me know if you wish to call for a site visit at any point in the meeting. Okay. Now we move on to matters for decision. Application number P2025-0236, mesh fence at Heathland Way, Darcy. The report is set out on pages 9 to 20 of the agenda pack, and this application is recommended for approval. I would now like to ask the planning officer to take us through the report. Chris?
Thank you, Chair. This is application P2025-0236. It's a retrospective application for the erection of a 1.8 metre mesh fence system installed at varying heights between 1.7 and 1.9 metres due to the underlit in ground conditions, land at Heathland Way, Darcy. As members note, this application has been requested to come to committee by the local board members for the reasons as set out within the report. This is the location plan identifying the location of the fencing with some images there of its type. Here you'll see some images of the fencing and other existing fencing on the wider site. You'll see the fencing is black, weld mesh fencing, similar to fencing that we put around our schools. So you will note here the fencing that rises up over the rock face. The applicant has stated that the fencing is required for health and safety requirements and as a contractable condition of the landowners to protect that area from trespass and for health and safety reasons. So again, You'll see another image of the fencing as it cuts across and over the top of the rock face. You'll see it set back from the existing stone wall located to the bottom to the side elevation of that property. Again, images of the fencing as it goes across the rock face set back beyond the existing landscape bank. This is an image of the exact same fencing that's been on site for a number of years now, doing a similar kind of job, protecting the rock face there, which is quite friable, and to protect obviously from any rock fall, but also to keep residents and members of the public away from it. This is an area of the site that runs up to the steps that have been built into the rock face that go up to the further phase of development further on. And again, similar fencing, but actually to a higher height. This fencing here is about 3 meters high and located to the rear of the existing playground. It's been there for approximately 10 years. The application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Yes. Do the local ward members, councillors Helen Carey Clark and Ken Phillips, have anything to say? Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to say a great deal on this because our reasoning is set out in the report before you. It's our issue is around the visual impact of this fence in the location and at the height it is. Not just the technical height, if you like, but the practical height it rises to, in effect, around 4 meters above where you'd actually be standing as it goes over the rock face, and is therefore at sort of first floor level window with the neighbouring properties. A visual impact is obviously something that is not accessible in terms of, it meets X figure, X percentage. There is an element of subjectivity there, and I think it's important for the full committee to consider that issue above and beyond the recommendation made by the planning officers. I think it was important to come to committee because there is that element of subjectivity as to what the visual impact actually practically means, not just a statistical exercise. So really I don't think the photos in the report quite fully show the impact of it, but I don't agree with the assessment that the visual impact is at an acceptable level. I do think it's intrusive and incongruent and out of keeping with the surrounding residential area. I just asked the committee to consider that on its merits. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you. I just want to give the committee a bit of background on this development. The residents that live on this estate have to obey by very strict rules actually on what they're allowed to have and what they're not allowed to have on their own properties, what colour they can paint things, whether they can put bushes down, whether they can put trees, what sort of fencing they're allowed to have. They have to stick to a lot of rules, and these fences have just been erected without any consultation with those residents, and their complaint largely is that they're sticking to a set of rules. Now, why are the council allowing a developer a different set of rules? If we want the whole estate to be one of social cohesion, where we've got social housing living next to private housing, in order for that to work properly, everything needs to flow visually, and to have a separate sort of zoo style fencing that's up there now for the social housing, it's really not sending the right message out. And I'm perfectly, personally, I'm of the opinion that it shouldn't be a race to the bottom. We should always just try and get the best looking facilities that fit in amongst the housing that's already there whenever we're installing anything like that. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Ellen. I will now take questions from the members of the committee. Members, do you have any questions for the officers? Councillor Tim Bowen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. What is the gist of having this fence there? Is it the safety aspect? Is the bank moving in any way with this chain being put over it and the bottom? What is the safety aspect for it?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. We understand it's a contractual requirement by the developer. That there's a site, Heritage Gate, which is being built on the other side. So this is an area of heathland and rock face that lies between the two pieces of development. So there's a requirement contractually for health and safety reasons to ensure that members of the public can't have easy access onto this that could potentially fall off the rock face on the other side. So on the other side, the rock face has a drop down to that development, so it's ensure that there's some kind of security fencing around the site. The only other comment I was going to make is obviously just to reiterate, this is fencing that's already on Coed Darcy, built as part of phase 1 by Persimmon. This isn't necessarily any different fencing that's on the private Persimmon development that is on the Heritage Gate development, which was partially private and partially affordable housing when it was originally granted consent. I understand that a lot more now with affordable housing, but there's no differentiation between the design elements. This is a design of a fence that's already used on the site, as shown in photographs that we showed previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Can I just come back in quickly, Chair, a minute? So if we refuse this application and something happens with someone falling off this rock face, could we be held liability for turning this down?
As I said, it's slightly complicated due to the fact that there's quite a large section of this fence that don't actually require planning permission. So obviously you can build a fence up to 2 meters without planning permission unless it's adjacent to a highway and then it's 1 meter. Well, so what you would end up with is somebody able to actually take enforcement action against small sections of the fencing. Some part of it would already remain. So there's a question then about whether it would be expedient for us to take action to remove small sections of it that may not be permitted development that require planning permission. But obviously that would be an issue between the relevant developers should the application be refused. But that wouldn't mean that all of the fencing would be removed, because some of it is actually permitted developments, doesn't require planning permission.
Well, thanks, Tim. Thank you, Chris. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. It was in relation to what Councillor Kerry Clark just said about a differentiation, but Chris has just sort of explained that there is no differentiation, but to residents, is that the opinion of residents that it is the social housing, or is it across the whole development?
I'm not aware that that's been raised in any of the responses received. I said, whilst the site looks like one entire site, what you've got Coed Darcy, which is the element of the houses that I've shown photographs of today, and then on the other side you have a separate site which is called Heritage Gate, which is a precursor to Coed Darcy, so what we call pre-phase 1. But that is under a different planning permission, has a different set of design criteria, does not have the same design code that the other side has. But what you see is that this fence is exactly the same design and colour as fencing used already on the private Persimmon site. There is no difference in terms between the two. So in one, let's marry the two differentiated sites together because it is the same design fencing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen? Why don't you turn your hand down, Ellen? Okay. Yes, okay. Sarah Thomas, please.
Thank you. Yes, I was just wondering, is there a reason they couldn't put the fence up by the drop that you were talking about, as opposed to putting it so close to the development?
The fencing is all the way around. It encloses that area completely. with locked gated access then for means of maintenance.
Sarah? Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, no more questions, well. Would the local members, the local ward members, like to sum up before I move on to the recommendation?
I see.
No?
Yeah. Yeah, the fence, I'm right in thinking, aren't I, Chris, that the fence that was previously there that runs along the bottom bit of the cliff face was a wooden fence, which was a lot more organic looking, and the residents had no objections to that. Is there any reason why a wooden fence couldn't go up instead of this fence that the residents don't like?
I would assume that this is the permanent solution. Prior to obviously any development completed down in Heritage Gate, there was probably no reason for a permanent fencing solution in that area. But now that area has been built out, that is obviously why they've gone to a more permanent solution, and one that obviously is relatively maintenance free and more robust. So obviously wooden fences get damaged over time. So I imagine this is the solution that they've come up with to provide a more long-term safety solution for that area. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah. Ken, would you like to come back with anything?
Only to note, Chair, that I would suggest that we're talking about, as I said earlier, visual impact, and the similar fencing that has been noted in other locations. I would suggest is in a position where the visual impact of it is significantly lower. It's a far less prominent position. It's not rising over the top of a rock face close to housing or along the highway in the same way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Now moving on to the recommendation and conditions, which start on page 19 of the report. And again, this application is recommended for approval. Can I have a proposer and a seconder to consider the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Davies.
I propose, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Badson. Tammy, could you please ask each member if they have been present for the whole of this item and how they wish to vote? And could you then confirm the decision, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. Thank you. I'll start with Councillor Tim Bowen, please. Have you been present for the whole of this item, and how do you wish to vote?
Yes and yes.
Yes, okay. So yes, as in 4, is that right? 4, Councillor Bowen, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Just clarifying. Okay, Councillor Matthew Crowley, please, same questions.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. I have been present for the whole article, and I'd like to vote with the officer's recommendation, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Crowley. Councillor Heath Davis, please. Have you been present for the whole of this item, and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, Tammy, I've been present the whole of the process, and I go with the officer's recommendation. It's a yes for me.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rosalind Davis, please.
Yes, I've been present for the whole item and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch. Councillor Jeff Jones, Chair, please.
Yes, I have been present and I vote with the officer's decision.
Thank you. Councillor Carl Jordan, please.
Good afternoon all. Good afternoon, Tammy. I can confirm I have been present throughout the item and vote in favour.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dennis Keogh in the room, please.
Yes, I've been part of the entire item and I'll be voting for.
Thanks, Councillor Keogh. Councillor Suzanne Paddison, please.
Yes, Tammy, I have been here throughout and I'll vote in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phil Rogers, please.
Hello, Tammy. Yes, I have been present throughout and I vote in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. And finally, Councillor Sarah Thomas, please.
I have been present throughout and I support the recommendation.
Thank you. Can I just check I haven't missed any voting members of the committee from that vote? No, there we go. That's a unanimous for there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. At the request of Councillor Crowley, we will consider this application later in the meeting. So we move on to agenda item 7. Thank you. Application number P25-0344, change of use from dwelling house to house of multiple occupation, Talbot Road, Talbot. The report is set out on pages 29 to 46 of your agenda pack, and this application is recommended for approval. I would now like to ask the planning officer to take us through the report.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
This is application P 2025-0344 for change of use of dwelling house use class C3 to a house of multiple occupation use class C4 with fenestration alterations to rear elevation at 101 Talbot Road, Talbot. This is the application site. You see the application site there, red there. It's a mid-terrace property with a rear lane at the rear and Talbot Road at the front. These are the proposed elevations of it. If you note, there's a rear dormer extension also proposed to be built on the property. That dormer extension is permitted development and thereby not set out within our report. Although those works are required to provide the full scheme. You will see the existing and proposed existing elevations there and floor plans. These are the existing street scenes. You'll see the very similar elevations to the properties. You will note the parking restrictions along the frontage there, all similar to storey properties. This plan is taken from the report. As we've set out on pages 37 to 38, the local authority does not have a specific policy within the local development plan currently that relates to HMO or changes of use of properties to multiple flats. So thereby we have historically, prior to us moving forward our replacement development plan, utilised the supplementary planning guidance that Swansea used in terms of identifying levels of acceptability of HMO type uses within areas, and that's based on percentages in terms of numbers, but also on things like preventing HMOs being either side of a sandwiching a residential property, and also looking at, as you note from our report, this property will be a licensed HMO due to the fact that it has accommodation over 3 floors, and licensing will thereby required for it, which looks at the amenities of the occupiers of the property and also the appearance of the external arrangements of the property to ensure that the property is kept in a standard commensurate with properties within the area itself. You will note from this plan, as you see, the application site is identified within the centre of the 50-metre buffer. That sets out that there's one property, which will be this one, which will be within the 50 metres, and we've identified the other 4 properties that are within 200 metres. As set out on page 38, that would be 1 of 33 properties within the 50-metre zone, and within the 200-metre zone, there will be 2% of all properties being HMOs should this one be approved. You'll note that the tipping point as set out within the policies and guidance within Swansea is currently set at 10%. So clearly in terms of carrying the area at this time, there is no evidence that this change of use would result in any harm or change to the overall character or appearance of the area. You will note that as part of the report on page 39, the space standards that are currently used by environmental health are also in compliance with this proposal. The application has been amended to address issues of flood risk, removing any sleeping accommodation off the ground floor. And you will note the responses again from the highway section who offer no objection, noting that this property would be a 6-bed HMO and the existing property could be occupied by 6 people, thereby in terms of parking standards there would be no difference. It is also noted by the highway section that there's a designated active travel route to the rear of the property along the lane at the back. In terms of our recommendation, we're recommending approval of this application, and though that recommendation and the conditions proposed are set out on pages 45 and 46 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. No local ward members, Councillor Sharon Freegard and Said for Arman, have anything to say? Oh, Said? Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Said?
yeah, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, yes.
Oh, brilliant, yes. Well, good afternoon, Chair, and thank you to yourself and member of the Planning Committee for giving both myself and Sharon the opportunity to speak today against this application. I'm extremely grateful, same time surprised, because the previous 3 to 4 HMO application we've had in our ward over the last 18 months, maybe slightly more. Despite our plea, we were never given the opportunity to be able to speak against them. So today is quite an exceptional for us. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Chair, I'm here today to object to the planning application for change of use at the Talbot Road, number 101, from residential dwelling to an HMO occupation. Firstly and foremost, this proposal that the officer just presented is not keeping with the character of the area. I know this. I live here. I live in the ward. I represent people of this ward who live here and been living here for decades. Talbot Road and its surrounding street are long established residential communities, and they are largely made up of family homes, which allowing this change of use to HMO will most definitely risk or undermine the balance and character of the neighborhood. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, there are serious concerns around parking and highway safety. I know officer showed you a picture where there's a lot of restriction outside the property, and that restriction applies throughout the town area. So there's a bit of a concern from me about the highway and safety issue. Talbot Road already experienced congestion and pressure on parking spaces. And I believe an HMO typically results in a higher number of adult occupants and therefore more vehicles associated with the property. This will no doubt inevitably add to the strain, making it difficult for existing residents and raising the risk of obstruction for emergency vehicle and service vehicles. I need to highlight, Mr. Chairman, that there are 2 schools which quite close by to Talbot Road, and particularly where the HMO is. So there's a great safety concern of children attending school, which may have an impact from this HMO. Thirdly, there is the issue of amenity and community cohesion. HMOs, by their very nature, and I don't have to explain this, bring higher level of turnover and transitions compared to family homes. Other members may have experiences in their ward. This can weaken the sense of community and stability that local residents have built over many years. Increased noise, waste management problems, and late night disturbance are very well documented issues which are associated with HMOs. And residents are rightly concerned, about this impact there. We must also consider the cumulative impact this may have. If this application is approved today, Chair, it sets a precedent for further conversion in the area. The cluster of HMOs would fundamentally alter the character of Talbot Road, reducing the availability of family housing at a time when council has identified a clear need of protecting and providing such homes. Finally, Mr. Chairman, the application does not, in my view, demonstrate how it will mitigate these impacts or provide reassurance to the community. The planning framework requires us to balance housing needs with protecting the amenity of existing residents. In this case, Mr. Chairman and members, I believe the harm clearly outweighs any potential benefits. For those reasons, Mr. Chairman and members, impact on parking, community amenity, residential character, and cumulative effect, I urge members to refuse this application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Rahman. Councillor Freegard, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Do appreciate you allowing us to speak today. I would reiterate everything that Councillor Rahman has said and pick up on one or two things in a little more detail. In terms of the demographic that we've got, which was families, young families, elderly people, this HMO is going to negatively impact on that demographic, on people who've lived here for many years. But we need to also look at the families that are not moving into the area, which in itself has an impact on the schools with falling roles. And then we have to take children from outside the area. So it really is affecting our community. The community cohesion is not what it used to be. And in terms of you talking about, I think the planning officer was talking about other HMOs within 200 metres, it seems a lot closer than 200 metres. I think perhaps we should have had the meterage done exactly, because we got the refuge centre, we've got the YMCA, we've got other issues there which are not classed as HMOs. So we have got a real hotspot here. In terms of the antisocial behaviour, obviously that has draws on police resources, which they have limited resources, and we have had a lot of issues in that particular area, stretching down to Station Road, which is almost adjoining Talbot Road. I think Councillor Rahman did point out about the position of this particular house, which is very, very, very close to within a few metres of the hot dog place, the groomers on the corner, plus the traffic light issue. So parking is of a premium here. And particularly when we're looking at 6 dwellings with refuse, the drain on the council resources there is enormous. We cannot go to the back, as Chris showed there, because the lane is too small for the vehicles to get down. So we have got a lot of issues with this particular HMO. The other thing is I had a very concerned resident whom I've spoken to the council about, because they were absolutely distraught at the HMO going close by. They've recently lost a close family member. They've got significant health issues. And I have spoken to the council about this. I think they are aware of it. Another reason is that it is claimed that one of the windows of the proposed development will be overlooking and looking into the kitchen of an adjacent or an adjoining house. So obviously that's not acceptable either. But on some other points, I'd like to mention that whilst the planning officer has said that there's no harm in terms of the character and appearance of the area, in talking about the building, we need to be looking at the harm and the character change of the people that live in this community. It has already been severely impacted. And whilst this isn't a planning criteria issue, I think that it's a moral one and a human one that we need to start focusing on, because given the number of HMOs in my ward, then it's absolutely remiss to think that we haven't got a policy of our own and we're using Swansea's, which is absolutely bizarre. Really is incredulous. Swansea is a city with completely different needs to a town area with 2 schools in very close proximity to the row of houses in which we have placed all these HMOs. And to not have a policy of our own which will tie together a cohesive dwelling area for our community is just absolutely crazy, because we want people to contribute to our community, and this is not contributing to the community. It is in fact destroying. I'd go so far as to say it's destroying our community. And I would wholeheartedly ask that we refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freegard. I will now take questions from the members of the committee. Members, do you have any questions for the officer, please? Yes. Oh, Councillor Sarah Thomas.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to come in on something that Councillor Freegard mentioned. I do think it's a bit odd that we're using Swansea's policy. I mean, Swansea isn't just a city, it's a student city. And student cities obviously have a much higher demand for HMOs. And if we're using their statistics, I do feel like we're probably overusing, like we're probably aiming a little high for our needs as a town. So I agree, we do need our own one, but I think if we're going to keep using the Swansea one, then we need to lower the thresholds a little bit for ourselves.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. The reason why we don't have our own policy is at the time when the local development plan was adopted in 2016. There is not an identified issue that requires us to have a policy or supplementary planning guidance to deal with it. Obviously, since that time, society has changed, and we've also had a university built within Neath, Talbot, which has raised concerns in certain specific areas regarding HMO development. Obviously, we've reiterated a number of times within this committee the change in household demographics that have been undertaken over the last 5 to 10 years, which has resulted in a massive shortfall of 1-bed units, and changes that we've seen within housing sites where previously we dragged developers kicking and screaming for affordable housing units on sites. Obviously, most housing developments are either affordable housing or partnerships between affordable housing developers and private developers. In terms of the policy, we utilise Swansea because they've got an historic issue with it, so they could identify an existing problem within that area to justify having a policy and supplementary planning guidance to do it. So within our forthcoming replacement development plan, I would urge any members who have involvement with that to obviously discuss at the relevant time issues in regarding policy and or supplementary planning guidance that would be tailored specifically to identify what the issues are those areas borough-wide, are they just specific area-based, and what policies in which we could justify identifying what harm and what we're trying to address as part of those policies. In the interim, we do use Swansea's supplementary planning guidance, which is the nearest one to us. Just to give you some kind of idea, Cardiff uses a 65% tipping point, whereas we're using the 10% that Swansea is using. Obviously, they have areas where they're significantly higher than that, because obviously they were introducing the policy after the cat's out the bag. So in terms of where we are, we're holding a line, and every application that we've had so far would be in compliance with that line that we're drawing. Just to come back on a couple of the points that obviously have already been said. So in terms of that drawing the line, we are utilising that 10% to ensure that that issue in terms of change to character is addressed early on prior to us having that policy in place. And in terms of that, it is not just the character of the building, it is also the character of the area and the demographics of that area, so the people that live within that area. So the whole reason for the 10% is not that the building itself would change character, it's that the character of the demographics within that area will be maintained. And as pointed out, this is, there are residential and commercial developments within that 50 to 200 metre zone. And the blue dot to the top of the plan that I showed you was YMCA property that was identified by Councillor Freegard. So the issue is to identify the harm. So notwithstanding whether or not in any local authorities area they've reached that tipping point, there are a number of appeal cases where they've even reached that tipping point and they've gone beyond it. Then inspector will always ask you to identify the harm from this single application. So what members would need to consider is what harm does this one application have that would result in 2% of applications within that area to be HMOs beyond the residential issue in that area. So I think I've addressed the policy issue and the social cohesion. I would just like to bring my colleague Justin Griffiths in just to comment on the highway matters that were raised by both local members.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members and officers. Obviously, looking at it from a highway safety point of view, my officers and myself were to do this assessment. We would use the parking standards that we currently have beneath Port Talbot, and members need to be made aware that this house has no parking currently for the use of this being a residential unit. So as a like-for-like basis, we'd use a maximum of 3 car parking spaces. There is no car parking spaces there currently at the moment, so we deemed it acceptable because our parking standards in SPG deems it to be. So from a policy point of view, I want to touch upon the more sustainable modes of transport that we also need to look at when we're doing an assessment of such a use class, certainly in the town centre. And what we are faced with in this particular site or development is that the site is situated within relatively walking distance to the town centre itself. To the rear lane, there is a designated cycle network, an NPT designated cycle network. So, and of course the walking and the cycling ticks the box in terms of active travel, as my colleague Chris did mention earlier on. There is also, it is the main thoroughfare, if you like, or spine road going through Port Talbot, and there is also a bus route which regularly goes through there. There is restrictions on the public highway which prevent people from parking, which restrict people from parking indiscriminately on the highway. And we do have enforcement teams to go out and check them also. So from our point of view, when we do an assessment, we have to take this into consideration once we give our observations back to the planning department. And we feel that having done a thorough and a rigorous assessment of this particular development and this application, that it does not contravene in any way, shape or form our policy under TR2 of the local development plan. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Justin.
And I was just going to mention as well, is we touched on the emerging local development plan and the importance of us to get a local development plan. I'm sure you're all aware that our existing local development plan has a drop dead date to 2026. If we do not get a newly adopted development plan prior to the end of this development plan, then basically we have no development policies with it to be able to determine planning applications against. So whilst this plan would still have some weight in the determination of planning applications, the risk is that post 2026, unless we get a new development plan in place with relevant policies and supplementary planning guidance, then potentially we will be looking at more applications coming in with people trying to go against those policies because obviously they're out of date. Now, we accept the fact that there are no policies for supplementary plan guidance on HMO, and we've set that out within the report. But also, members should be aware that as part of that process, there will also be a reconsideration of highway standards in terms of what parking requirements would be for changes of use to more intensive residential uses, like changes of use of old commercial buildings into flats, as well as HMOs. There might be a specific standard that's required for HMOs, or for the applicants to prove that there is as Justin pointed out, they get sustainability points to reduce their car parking requirements, and to identify that there's no existing issues in the area. but also in terms of environmental health, space standards and licensing standards that they use for HMOs. So as I pointed out previously, because this HMO is 3-storey, it becomes a licensed HMO, which means the owner of that property has to sign a license, which requires the property be kept to a good standard internally for the residents' benefit, but also to ensure that the property is kept to a reasonable standard in line with other properties in the area. So, as Justin pointed out, in terms of enforcement, there's also enforcement in terms of refuse collections and bin stores, and that is looked at as well by Environmental Health as part of that process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor, Councillor Paddison.
I beg your pardon, I had to switch devices because my battery was going in my phone and my camera was off temporarily. So I do, sorry about that, Chair. Yes, thank you, Chair. When we go back historically and look at some of the HMOs that we've had in, I can remember opposite the university, I think it was in Helen Kerry Clark's ward, there were some HMOs that weren't sort of registered with us. Because I think this official HMO designation came in 2018, correct? If you correct me if I'm wrong. And do we have any records of houses being used as HMOs that before it officially came in as an HMO?
Yes, you are correct, Councillor Paddison, as always, but it was 2016, I think it was. So the legislation changed in 2016, brought out the new C4 use class, and that use class came in, and at that point, as soon as that legislation came in, any future application would then require plan permission. Prior to that date, anything that may have been used as a small HMO, not the large ones, but they would have been properties that would have been registered, and both ourselves and Environmental Health collate that information together. So in terms of that plan I showed you, that is a collation of information that we have from planning application data, but also from data that Environmental Health have from historic HMO applications that preceded that. So you were correct in Elba Crescent. There were a couple of properties that were already HMO before the changes to the legislation, but we ensure that as much as we can that they're all captured within that process now.
Thank you for that. And if I may just follow on, Chair,
yes.
A lot, is made about the fact that we have not got our own SPG regarding the use of HMOs. But at the end of the process of the RLDP, we will have to put one in place. I think Lana is saying that the officers are working on that. However, it won't be a panacea for all ills and decline every HMO, because, correct me again if I'm wrong, Chris, but the plan, the RLDP, will have to be signed off by Welsh Government. And if our rules for local authority here isn't conducive to what Welsh planning law says we should be doing, they won't sign it off. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes and no. Just to be clear, with the old local development plan process, as it went through the various stages, it gained weight in terms of planning application determination. So what you would have seen previously is we would have been referring to unitary development plan policies and emerging local development plan policies. With this new process, the Welsh Government brought in for the replacement development plan. The new development plan has no weight in terms of planning until such time that the inspector says you can go off and adopt your plan. Now, obviously, then members would then need to consider whether they want to adopt the plan, and we know of certain authorities have decided not to adopt their plan, and up in North Wales. But obviously, through that process, you will consider whether or not there would be specific policies in the plan.
Right.
And as you note in the local development plan, they may also reference the need for supplementary planning guidance. So, as you are aware, with the existing local development plan, we would then produce our own supplementary planning guidance that will go out to that will be consulted on. It may well be that, for example, a policy in the plan may identify 3 specific areas in Neath Talbot where we think there is need for supplementary planning guidance to cover HMOs. It may not be a blanket anywhere in Neath Talbot issue. But you are correct in saying we still have to provide the evidence to show how we've come to the conclusion that we need a policy.
Yeah.
We have to identify the harm and the need. You're right, it cannot justify a blanket ban on a specific type of accommodation. So it's likely to put in limits and controls on what can be done and where and what circumstances. But again, it will be guidance that will be attached as probably supplementary planning guidance. But you're correct, it still has to be evidence-based.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Chair, basically, I have the utmost respect for the local ward members and any ward member that has come forward over the years to say that the residents are not happy. However, we are stuck between a rock and a hard place. The actual planning, Welsh planning law is as it is. It's just very difficult for ward members to actually be able to say to residents, well, I did my best, because they have been doing their best. And as far as I can see no reason why we would refuse this application based on all the planning law as it stands. So thank you for coming to the committee and putting the views of your residents. But I am not swayed as of yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patson. Councillor Crowley, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think we've all suffered a HMO in our ward at some point or other. The last one that I can remember vividly was on the corner of Victoria Road and Hospital Road, which was an old sweet shop back in the 40s and 50s, and it developed and I was a HMO. And all the lovely little things that the officers said wouldn't happen, does happen. There's rubbish strewn all over the road, there's cars parked everywhere. All these lovely policies, SPG 1s, TAN 2, you can keep naming them as long as you like. On the ground, it doesn't work. In planning law, you can give it any credence you like, because there'll always be a policy somewhere in planning law where we can all hide behind. I, for one, am sick to the teeth of it. Okay? So for me, and I came to a meeting like this as a non-member of planning, and we had to accept it. Well, unfortunately, I don't think we have to accept it. There are things that we can do to buck trends. We haven't got a policy, okay? And that was 5 years ago, and we still haven't got a policy. But when we do write the policy, we'll be able to write the policy in a way that suits the needs of our communities and the people that we represent. That's exactly what I'd like to see, because I think, whether we like it or not, our communities, if we went out there and tried to explain all these different planning rules and regulations, it's a mire for us all, not even only the general public. For us who partly understand it, it's difficult. And people who are living in these communities, who have lived there for decades, just can't get their head around in the grips with all these different planning laws. So for me, I will be voting against it, because yet again, we haven't got an HMO planning policy, and that's the reason why I'm voting against it. You either get one, and we get one that suits us, or don't bring another HMO to me. That's the way I feel about it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crowley. Councillor Keogh?
Yeah, in support of my former colleagues, as you know, I was former councillor in the Talbot ward, and I've got into serious trouble in the past on my feelings on HMOs, which are well known. But to give you some background, I'm going to say Sharon and Saif of what they've got going on that A48 there, the Talbot Road. Opposite where this is going in, there was a former RSL, which caused horrendous problems and the disruption to the neighbourhood there. They had, well, I think I was still a councillor when it happened. But the thing is, the problems we had to get that person out of that property because of what they were calling. Now, we can't dictate as to who lives where. We can't do that. But the thing is, I've always said, you put 6 people who are completely unknown to each other into a house sharing 1 bathroom and 1 kitchen. It's difficult enough when I've got a family of 6 living in a house, but all known to each other, and they still have their problem. And I don't think enough consideration is taken into the mix. And when these people are placed in these houses, which normally are young people who have left home for one reason, very juvenile in their attitude, couldn't care less about the local convention. And, you know, it's difficult. I try to go down the route where we have to put regulations in place when you convert these homes into HMOs, that higher regulations, I believe all of them, no matter how old they are, should have water sprinklers fitted to them, which make it more difficult again for an HMO to be created. Now, where that house is, it's actually 3 houses away from one of the busiest junctions in Port Talbot, namely the A4107, which is traffic light controlled. Outside that property, there is a bus stop. The drug problem they've had along Talbot Road, going up into Broad Street. The lanes at the back are rat infested because it backs onto rail tracks property, who don't seem to do a lot there. But yeah, they've got horrendous problems there, and I think you have to see that. But unfortunately, again, our hands are tied when it comes to planning policy. Now, look, as I said, I got into serious trouble last time, so I'm very careful in what I say now. So I don't want to end up in a Western Mail and the Mail on Sunday again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. I can see that the local ward members do have their hands up. So I'd like to call on the local ward members out to sum up before I move on to the recommendation. Councillor Freegard first, please.
Oh, thank you for giving me this time, Chair. Do appreciate it. I can't stress enough how important it is to have a policy of our own. With it being nearly 10 years, it's just, I can't believe I'm saying that, 10 years without our own policy. It's just absolutely crazy. I would like to say, in terms of the highway issues, that I did say when we were looking at the Lower Dyffryn development, which we lost again, that people parked in Talkenna Road. But again, we were overruled. That development went there against all the objections of the community. And so that's where people park for Talbot Road. So once again, we're being blocked everywhere with the parking. The fact that it was mentioned that how close we are to the bus stop and the train station, that adds to the drag issue. So we not only got county lines, but we're making it easy, so easy for people to actually, you know, obtain these things because of the proximity to the bus station and the train station and to the main town. Whereas we wanted to keep these areas for elderly people and for families. So I have yet to see one HMO in our ward declined. Some of you may have 1 or 2 HMOs. We've got 7+, plus the refugees, and we've got the YMCA, plus other stuff as well. Close to, I'm talking meters, within a nursery school, an infant school, a junior school. It's just, you couldn't write it really. You couldn't write it, but we can still say, oh, well, we'll have enforcement. We are already low on resources. All you councillors are fully aware of the budget pressures. Refuse, you know, we've got no end of issues with the lanes, with refuse collections, and the boys do as much as they can. We are not increasing our workforce to match our needs. So I hope all of these things will be taken into account when we look at our own policy, but goodness knows when that will be, because Chris was talking about 2016. So, I mean, in the meantime, because of the good or the advantageous highway issues that we have, we seem to be having all the HMOs just being accepted. But I would like to thank Matthew for what you said, Matthew, because it's really important. I don't want to get to a point where we cannot get our communities back and community cohesion back, because we need to be thinking about people, no matter who is in Welsh Government, which party is in Welsh Government, it doesn't matter. We are elected by the people. We're supposed to be here for the people. And we need to be doing the best for the people, even if it's against planning criteria. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Safe?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chairman, I've been listening to everyone today, and I find it a little bizarre that Mr. Chris Davis is using an SPG that doesn't belong to us, SPG that doesn't reflect our community, and SPG is not effective to our community. And also, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Pattison mentioned that she's stuck in a rock and a hard place. Well, she doesn't have to today. She can make a decision whichever way she wants. Officers' recommendation are just recommendation. Members' decision matters today, not officers. And Councillor Keogh mentioned his hands are tied. I'm not sure what he means by that, Mr. Chairman. He's a member of Taibach and Margam Ward. He can make his own judgment today. And with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, am I able to ask a question to Mr. Chris Davis, if I may?
Yes, that's safe. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one question. Mr. Davis, are you aware that Station Road is, sorry, not Station Road, Talbot Road is a front of house collection, and they don't use wheelie bin, they still on black bags. With this in mind, the number of black bags waste will increase in Talbot Road. We already have refuse issues there, so they still present black bags. So if it's, say, 5 bedrooms or 6 bedroom, whatever, this will result in more excess black bag waste presented. Has there ever been a consultation with the street care team on this, or there hasn't been a consultation? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have to say today.
If you let me come back on that. I mean, in terms of the consultation, there is no statutory requirement for us to consult waste on this application. However, as stated, there are enforcement powers that are way beyond planning that cover recycling, waste collection. And as I stated earlier, this property will be, due to the fact that it has to address the flooding issues by removing accommodation on the ground floor, sleeping accommodation on the ground floor. This is a licensed HMO which also has further controls on it, which would mean if they don't comply with the license, they either have to reduce the accommodation to below, they have to reduce it down to 4, or reach compliance within a set date. So there are additional controls on this property above and beyond planning. And in terms of the comments regarding policy, we cannot introduce a policy into a plan that we've already adopted. So just to be clear, it's not like we can just add in an extra page into the local development plan and put a policy in there. And there are no policies within the plan that would allow us to create an SPG. So it's not by the want of will or trying. We have to go through this process to get a new plan adopted to get the policies in place that the councillors here today are talking about. So I would only stress again to engage proactively with that process, and for anyone who's actually involved in that on the cabinet to push through that process in order for us to get those policies in place. But it is not something that we can just add in as an issue at a later date during because the plan has already been adopted.
Thank you, Chris. There are 2 members of the committee with their hands up. So it's Councillor Suzanne Pattison and Tim Bowen. So if you'd like to come back briefly, please, Suzanne.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, briefly. I totally understand the local members' pleas to the planning committee members to do what's right for the residents. However, when you are sitting on planning and there is a right of appeal. So if we were to say no, refuse this one, it goes to appeal. And I'd like to ask Chris, in your professional opinion, what sort of percentage would there be of us, of the inspectors siding with us if we were to refuse this particular HMO?
I'm sorry, Councillor, I can't give you a percentage. All I would say is that obviously, if we had justification to refuse any application, and we thought that that had sufficient weight in order for us to defend that decision and appeal, that is the recommendation that we will bring it forward to you. As you can see, this is a very low percentage in terms of issues regarding social cohesion and community. It's 2%. I mean, at no point do I think we'd ever get a policy that would say you can't have any houses of HMO. There are various versions going around between 10%. As stated, in some areas where they've obviously lost their argument already, you've got areas where the policy says no more than 65% HMO areas. So, as I said, I wouldn't like to guess at an outcome at appeal.
Right. Sorry, I shouldn't have put you in that position.
No, but we have been collecting data. Obviously, with planning policy, we're collecting data regarding decisions on appeals. But if members cannot put forward identifying what the harm is, and notwithstanding whether you reach a tipping point, even if this was 10%, you have to identify what harm this particular application would bring to the area. And unless you can identify the harm, and that seems to be the thrust of most inspectors' decisions, yes, I can see you've got a policy, but exactly what harm have you identified here? Unless you can show that, then it's likely that appeal would be, they would win that appeal and they would get costs against the authority because they cannot defend that decision that they made.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
Suzanne.
No, thank you, Chair.
Justin would like to come in.
Just come in on the back. Thank you, Chair. Just come in on the back of Chris, really my colleague, and looking at it from a highways point of view, we are working through with Lana, for the future to look at a policy for HMO. But we, as we said all along, we don't have one at this current moment in time. My officer who dealt with this application from a highway safety point of view and drainage, we take careful consideration with regards to the compliance with not only the policy but the standards that we have adopted as a council, and we've applied them to this application. I just want to make that clear, because if this did go to appeal, obviously we are supporting the application because we feel that it is compliant with TR2, which is our current LDP policy. So I just want to make that clear on the back of what Chris has said as well. So from a highway safety point of view, yes, we have looked at it. We've looked at it rigorously. We've taken into account all aspects of highway safety, and our observations to planning was that we do support this application. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Chris. You okay, Suzanne?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Mike, do you want to come in?
Okay, so thank you. Thank you. Can members hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Marvellous, marvellous. Members, clearly this is a contentious matter and you've all made your contributions in respect of the application. I think the starting point in respect to this application, however, is to look at the officer's recommendation. Now, when Chris and his colleagues came to consider this, they are required to act in an objective, impartial way, and they've approached the application in that respect. Chris has made his observations in respect of the policies, where this matter is caught and where perhaps it may fall through because of the matter of the absence of that particular policy. Nevertheless, on balance, he has formed a view in accordance with the Planning Compulsory Purchase Act that this application is appropriate for recommendation. Now, whilst you could decide against that, it would be voting against an officer's recommendation. And taking the points that Councillor Patterson made, if this matter became appealed, any inspector would look at the officer's report and the recommendation that he or she had made in respect of that. And that may indicate the direction of the outcome of such an appeal. Chris was right, and he was circumspect in saying he didn't know what the outcome of that appeal would be 100%. If it went against the authority, that puts the authority at risk of costs. But in addition to that, it puts the council at risk of reputational harm if an inspector finds against the authority. None of that is meant by way of threat, but that's a reality of the situation. I think that's been acknowledged by members throughout. Councillor Crowley has picked up on the point that to a certain extent, perhaps hands have been bound here. You can depart from an officer's recommendation, but in my view, I would not recommend it. I would not recommend that.
Thank you, Mike. Oh, that's Chris. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I have no more questions. So I would now like to move on to the recommendation.
Matt's got his hand up.
That's right.
Oh,
sorry. Sorry, Councillor Crowley, I've started now with the recommendation, okay? So I'll proceed with that, okay? Now moving on to the recommendation and conditions, which start on page 45 of the report. And again, this application is recommended for approval. Could I have a proposer and a seconder to consider the recommendation?
I'll be the proposed chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Rosalind Davis, you seconding?
I'll second, diolch.
Thank you. Thank you. Amy, could you please ask each member if they have been present for the whole of this item and how they wish to vote? And could you then confirm the decision, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair, certainly. So starting with Councillor Tim Bowen, please. Have you been present for this item?
Yes, and in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Moving on to Councillor Matthew Crowley, please.
Thank you, Tammy. I have been present for the whole meeting, and I just would like to make one comment before I pass judgment on how I'm going to vote. Mike, I take your professionalism, as I do all officers, with the kudos that it comes with. I for one, am not against officers and their advice purely because that's why they're there in place. They're there to protect us as an authority. However, Mike, and I take on board all what you've said. Now, unfortunately for me, though, I'll have to be a victim of my own success or failure. I am not going to approve this particular application, and I'll have to take that on the chin and whoever wants to challenge me thereafter. I don't care who it is. But the reality is, for me, there are human elements that we have to consider in planning law. And I'm sick to the teeth of hearing about all the different proposals. And we'll get a bridge put in front of us that we won't be able to cross, and I get it. But on this particular occasion, I'm voting with the local members and to refuse the HMO.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Councillor Heath Davis, please.
Yes, I'll be present, and yes, I'll go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Rosalind Davis, please.
I have been present for the whole item, and as much as I sympathise with ward members and residents of the area, I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Jeff Jones, Chair, please.
Yes, I have been present and I vote with the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Carl Jordan, please.
Hi again, yes, confirming I have been present throughout the item, Tammy, and listening to the advice of the legal officer. Regrettably, I vote in favour of the application.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Dennis Keogh, please.
I have been chair for the entire item, and with regret, I voted for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. Councillor Suzanne Patterson, please.
Thank you, Tammy. Yes, I've been here throughout and I vote for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Rogers, please.
Yes, Tammy, I've been present for the full presentation and with a heavy heart because of the lack of policy and the current legislation. I have to back the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. And finally, Councillor Sarah Thomas, please.
I have been present throughout and I oppose the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Okay, just checking I haven't missed any voting members from that roll call. No, Chair, there we are. That application has been approved.
Thank you, Tammy.
At that point, Chair, I'm leaving, obviously, because the next item refers to me. Thanks all. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Application number P2025 0405, installation of heat pump at Sidwell Way, Sandfields, Talbot. The report is set on pages 21 to 28 of your agenda pack, and this application is recommended for approval. I would now like to ask the planning officer to take us through the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is P2025 0405, installation of air source heat pump, not heat pump, I spelled that wrong, didn't I? Site of the property and 61 Sidwell Way, Sandfields. So this is the application site. You see it's a detached property in residential area. Please note that this application is a committee, obviously, because Councillor Crowley is a member of the local authority and on plan committee, so he's got a double whammy. And the reason why it requires planning permission is the distance off the boundary with the property. So you usually see these going through permitted development, but it's located on the side of the property within the required distance to the side boundary with the adjoining property. It requires planning permission. So it's going on the side there, as you see indicated by the measurements. Here's a aerial photo showing the property itself. So you'll note there on the bottom left-hand corner, you will see where the installation is going to be located, just below that window. And this is a typical elevation of the plant proposed. So you will see our recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions imposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. As we have no local members present, I will now take questions from members of the committee. Do you have any questions, please?
I see no hands, Chair.
Here we are then, moving on to the recommendation. And the recommendation and conditions which start on page 27 of the report. And again, this application is recommended for approval. Could I have a proposal and seconder to consider the recommendation?
Happy to propose. Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Keogh and Councillor Thomas. Tammy, could you please ask each member if they have been present for the whole of this item and how they wish to vote? And could you then confirm the decision, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. Councillor Turnbull-Wyn, please.
Yes, and happy to go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Heath Davis, please.
Yes, I'm happy to go ahead as well.
Thank you. Councillor Rosalind Davis, please.
Yes, I've been present for the item and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch. Councillor Jeff Jones, please.
Yes, I have been present and I vote for the recommendation.
Diolch. Councillor Carl Jordan.
Present throughout, Tammy, and happy to go along with Matthew's request there.
Cheers. Councillor Keogh, please.
Yes, I'll be present at the entire meeting and I'm happy to go with it.
Thank you. Councillor Suzanne Patterson.
Yes, I've been here throughout, Tammy, and I vote to approve.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Rogers, please.
Yes, I've been present throughout and I'm happy to support the recommendation.
And finally, Councillor Sarah Thomas, please.
I've been present throughout and I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Chair, that has been unanimously supported.
Thank you, Tammy. Right. Now we move on to section B of the agenda, which is matters for information. Agenda items 8 and 9 detail the appeals determined and delegated decisions from the time frame indicated in the circulated report. As Chair, I can confirm that we note the information contained within these reports. We have no urgent items today. There are no further items. That ends the business for today. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks all, diolch pawb.
Bye.
Diolch yn fawr, pob hwyl.
Thanks, Vic.
Yes, that's that now, or do you,
My